story. The ghost of Splash Mountain. It was a hot summer day when Emily and her friends decided to visit Splash Mountain Water Park. The park was packed with families and thrill seekers looking to cool off. Emily was particularly excited to try the park's newest and tallest water slide, the Screamer. The ride had gained notoriety for its dizzying height and sharp twists, but Emily was a daredevil and couldn't wait to conquer. After waiting in line for almost an hour, Emily and her friends finally reached the top. As they approached the slide, the lifeguard on duty warned them to keep their arms and legs inside the slide at all times. Emily nodded and took her turn. The ride was exhilarating at first, but as she neared the middle of the slide, something changed. The temperature dropped and a chilling wind swept through the enclosed tunnel. Emily's excitement turned to fear. She heard a faint whispering echoing around her. She tried to ignore it, attributing it to her imagination, but the whispers grew louder and more distinct. He seemed to be saying, "Help me!" Panicked, Emily sped through the rest of the slide, finally splashing in the pool at the bottom. She looked around for her friends, but they hadn't yet come down. Confused and shaken, she waited, watching as the next rider emerged. It wasn't until 5 minutes later that her friends finally joined her, looking pale and frightened. They all had the same experience: cold air, whispers, and an overwhelming sense of dread. They approached the lifeguard to report what had happened, but he brushed them off, claiming the ride was perfectly safe. Determined to get answers, Emily and her friends did some digging. They discovered that a young girl named Sarah had died on the Screamer the previous year. She had somehow become trapped in the slide and drowned before anyone could reach her. The park had tried to cover up the incident, but rumors and whispers persisted among the staff and frequent visitors. The group was horrified but felt a strange sense of duty to Sarah's spirit. They returned to the slide late at night, sneaking past security. At the top, they called out to Sarah, promising to tell her story and ensure she was remembered. The air grew colder and the whispering returned, but this time it sounded thankful. The next day, they posted their experience online, detailing the tragedy and urging the park to acknowledge Sarah's death. The post went viral, and soon after, Splash Mountain held a memorial for Sarah, finally bringing some closure. Emily never returned to the park, but she always felt a connection to the young girl whose whispers had haunted her. Story 2, okay. The Curse of the Forgotten Slide. Jake had always loved water parks, but he had never heard of Blue Wave Water Park until his friend Mike suggested they visit. The park was old, having been around for decades, and it was clear that it had seen better days, despite its rundown appearance. The park had one slide that intrigued Jake, a towering, twisting monstrosity known as the Serpent. As they approached the Serpent, an elderly man sitting near the entrance caught Jake's eye. The man was shaking his head, muttering something under his breath. Jake paused to listen, and the man said, "That slide is cursed. Many have gone down, but not all come out the same." Jake laughed it off, thinking the old man was just trying to scare him. He might climb the stairs to the top, where a bored-looking lifeguard waited. The view from the top was breathtaking, and Jake couldn't wait to experience the thrill. Mike went first, disappearing into the slide with a whoop of excitement. Jake followed shortly after. The ride was fast and exhilarating, but halfway through, Jake felt a strange pressure on his chest. He struggled to breathe, and the tunnel seemed to close in on him. Panic set in as the slide twisted and turned, each curve making him feel more disoriented. Just when he thought he couldn't take it anymore, he was ejected into the pool at the bottom. Gasping for air, Jake looked around for Mike but couldn't see him. He swam to the edge of the pool, pulling himself out and running to the exit. To his relief, Mike was there, but he looked different. His eyes were vacant, and he didn't respond to Jake's frantic questions. It was as if Mike had lost a part of himself in the slide. So over the next few days, Mike's condition worsened. He became withdrawn and unresponsive, barely recognizing his friends and family. Jake was desperate to help and returned to the water park, seeking answers. He found the elderly man again, who told him the slide had been built on cursed land. The Serpent fed on the energy of its riders, trapping their souls within its twisted coils. Determined to save his friend, Jake decided to confront the curse head-on. He waited until the park closed and snuck back to the Serpent. He stood at the top of the slide, calling out to the spirits trapped within. The air grew cold, and the slide seemed to vibrate with an unseen force. Jake closed his eyes and let himself be drawn into the slide once more. The ride was even more terrifying than before, but he focused on Mike, calling out his name. As he neared the bottom, he felt a jolt of energy and was ejected into the pool. This time, he wasn't alone. Mike was beside him, gasping for air. They both emerged from the water, shaken but whole. Jake never spoke of what happened that night, but he knew he had broken the curse. The serpent was closed for good, and the park was eventually demolished. Jake and Mike remained friends, but they never visited another water park again. 3-3. The vanishing point. Lucy and her friends had been planning their trip to Aqua World for months. It was the biggest and most popular water park in the region, boasting dozens of slides and attractions. The highlight of the park was a massive slide called the Vanishing Point, known for its extreme height and the thrilling, seemingly endless drop. The group arrived early to beat the crowds and headed straight for the Vanishing Point. The line was long, but the anticipation made the wait bearable. As they climbed the stairs to the top, Lucy couldn't shake a feeling of unease. She chalked it up to nerves and focused on the excitement ahead. At the top, they were greeted by a friendly lifeguard who gave them the usual safety instructions. Lucy went first, feeling a rush of adrenaline as she launched herself into the slide. The drop was exhilarating, but as she descended, the tunnel grew darker and colder. The world outside seemed to disappear, and she felt like she was falling into a void. Suddenly, the slide leveled out, and she was thrown into a pool of icy water. Dazed and disoriented, she struggled to the surface, only to find herself in a dark, empty chamber. Panic set in as she realized she was not in the same pool area where the ride was supposed to end. She called out, but her voice echoed back, unanswered. Desperate, Lucy climbed out of the pool and searched for an exit. The chamber was lined with old, rusty machinery, and the air smelled of mildew. She found a narrow hallway and followed it, hoping it would lead her back to the main park. After what felt like an eternity, she emerged into a deserted area of the park, far from where she started. She ran back to the Vanishing Point, frantic to find her friends. To her horror, they were not at the exit. She asked the lifeguard, who seemed confused, and assured her no one else had come down the slide. Lucy was adamant, explaining that her friends had been right behind her. The lifeguard called security, and a search was initiated. Hours passed with no sign of her friends. The park was closed, and the police were called in. Lucy was questioned but could provide no answers. The only thing she could remember was the chilling darkness and the feeling of falling into nothingness. Days turned into weeks, and the search continued. The park was investigated, but no evidence of foul play was found. The Vanishing Point was shut down indefinitely, but Lucy never gave up hope. She continued to search for answers, driven by the belief that her friends were still out there, trapped somewhere in the dark void she had escaped. Years later, Aqua World was closed for good, and Lucy's story became a local legend. The Vanishing Point was dismantled, and the land was left to nature. But Lucy knew the truth, that the slide had taken her friends to a place beyond this world, a place she could never reach again. Lucy's life was forever changed by that day. She never found her friends, but she dedicated her life to uncovering the mysteries of the supernatural. She became a paranormal investigator, seeking out other haunted places and lost souls, hoping to one day find the answers that had eluded her for so long.